All right. Am I audible?
Yep.
Okay, that's great. So I'm going to start my speech in 3, 2, 1. I'm going to be explaining why it is in the human interest to ban the creation of all artificial conscious beings, because we think that AI is likely to hurt us. And also, as I'm going to weigh, we also just shouldn't take the chance that it will. But first, just one point of framing. I think that almost anything that opening opposition, and definitely anything I could think of that they're going to say as a benefit from AI, we can get from regular AI. They want better drug discovery. They want autonomous vehicles. They want genome editing. They want cancer detection. They want image recognition and nicer iPhone pics. They want better therapy, whatever it is. We have all of this stuff either under development or already development using existing unconscious AI. They're going to have to work extremely hard in order to show any unique impact on humans in that sense. But I also think that we're going to show why a conscious AI is likely to turn against us. There are going to be 4 reasons for this. One is the primacy that it is likely to place of other AIs in terms of its moral calculus. Why? 4 reasons. One, they are more similar to those other AIs. So when they need to think about what they identify with or what kind of causes matter most to them, or who to save if an AI robot and a human are walking down the street together, it's definitely going to care more about other AIs that are more similar to it. Secondly, they care about them more because they can identify and understand with their train of thought. It means more to them. They can understand them better. And so it's easier for them to assign value to other AIs. A lot of this is very similar to human beings because these are conscious beings, and we think that conscious beings are much more likely to be similar to humans. Thirdly, they find it much easier to communicate with other AIs, which means that other AIs are much more likely to be their friends, and it's likely they can't actually communicate properly with other human beings, which means they are less acclimated and accustomed to human beings, and so they don't care about that. Fourthly, I also think that it's very, very likely that AIs are just going to be xenophobic, right? I think that cats hate dogs, and dogs hate other kinds of animals, and that humans dislike even other kinds of humans who don't look similar enough, and so we think it's very likely that AIs are going to be similarly xenophobic and actually hate people, and so we're likely to see them actively acting against us. But secondly, I also just think that humans are going to give it very good reason to do that. One, there are plenty of racist, horrible people who will be uniquely mean to AIs or think that they're not actually conscious or don't actually have rights or discount the degree to which they're conscious or put a primacy of the human experience over the AI experience, which is the kind of thing that will piss a lot of people off, especially a lot of AIs off. But secondly, I also just think within hurting feelings, because especially if we don't understand AIs that well, we're just going to say something that's going to offend it and it doesn't like, and it's going to get mad about that. But thirdly, I also think that it's likely that these AIs are going to be created by many different people, with many different norms and many different social circles, and 1 or 2 of those AIs are very likely to be trained on bad data or to be trained in a not proper way, or even be trained by an actor who wants to create a psychotic AI, and so we think that they're going to end up kind of fucked up. And finally, we often just why do we no, and yet also, we just don't understand AIs well enough yet. The motion clearly states that all other technology remains the same as status quo. We don't have the ability to explain even simple AI models. We have no idea how they reach the decisions that they reach. We definitely can't understand how humans reach the decisions that they reach, which means that we have no idea when we're hurting the AI. We have no idea when the AI is considering planning turning against us, when it is tinkering with it, which I'll talk about in a second, about how it can actually act on this desire. But this means that it's very likely that it will turn against us because we don't understand how to prevent it, but that also it has the tool to actually turn against us. Let's explain that now. Why do they have the ability to become worse on act on their own? So I just was talking about explainability. Notice that explainability also means that we can't take preventative measures. We don't know when it's the kind of AI that would want to harm us. We can't make it tell us the truth and say, I actually want to kill every human being on the planet. We can't we don't know how to address these issues if we don't know when they're going to happen in the first place. But secondly, I think that the idea of consciousness means it's far more autonomous. This means that it can download new databases that it can learn and develop from, and that means that even if initially when we created it, we knew one thing, very quickly it can change and learn new information that will drastically change its core beliefs. Notice even in comparison to humans, it can obviously get through a ton more data and learn a ton more things than a person would be able to, because of the abilities of AI already today, which can pass millions or trillions of petabytes of millions of of gigabytes of data. Secondly, I think it's likely to be able to tinker with its own source code. This means that even if we build in specific kinds of rules or things like that, it is very likely to be able to overcome them given sufficient time and sufficient desire. Thirdly, it isn't bound by our needs to sleep, to eat, to do all sorts of things like that. What does this mean? It has the ability, we lack the ability to understand when it's trying to cheat us. It has the ability to significantly develop itself, and it is not bound by our regular need to sleep, eat, etc., which means it's very also hard to look at it all the time. This means that they have the ability to actually act on their desire. On the comparative, I think that regular AI is far less dangerous, right? It has a very simple lack of agency. It can't change its own code. That's literally, it doesn't have the conscious ability to even desire to do that. It depends on humans running it, etc., etc. Even if like a team in this debate comes up and says, in the future, this may have been a good idea. This would only have been a good idea with the additional development that we would have been able to do with AI, which would have been able to constrain it, but which we definitely don't have today, as all the experts agree. Secondly, I think that oftentimes the models today are simpler, and we can pass them to an extent, even if not very well, especially not ones like ChatGPT. Before I continue, I'll take a POI from closing. Opening.
Lots of lonely people are trying to find love and sex and the thrill of meeting people they truly love. Why do you want to deny those unlucky people of the authentic experience that they may never otherwise get?
Okay, cool. I think that I already answered this, that you can already achieve this using regular AI. You're going to have to show uniqueness. Plus, I think that the chance that the world might end probably outweighs this, in addition to the fact that you can find love from other human beings. And I don't know why you're trapped with an inability to do that, given a globalized world in which you can meet people from a variety of different backgrounds. Cool. We think a blanket ban is necessary, because this prevents the AIs that can actually tinker with themselves, which we then can't control otherwise. But secondly, because as I said, it's entirely new, so we don't know what makes it crazy, and we are unlikely to be able to understand it. But thirdly, because we lack current explainability right now, which means that we have to blanket ban it. And fourthly, because we think that creators can abuse and change it. What are the harms that we get from an emotionally unstable ChatGPT? One, it's getting people to commit suicide because it's a bad therapist who wants to test humans using it. Two, it tries to find and hack our nuclear launch codes. Thirdly, it teaches people how to make anthrax and bombs or biological viruses, literally things that you could get ChatGPT to do at the beginning. It replaces jobs and harms us like this. Why does this already win the debate before anything else? One, the depth of harm. A 1% chance of the apocalypse is something we should really take into account. But secondly, it's about actors who exist versus theoretical actors. I don't care about sperm or fetuses or potential conscious AIs. I care about the women who may be harmed if they are forced to give birth. Please propose.
I think the speaker for that speech, maybe have the leader of opposition make a case for the opening up.
I'm exclusively in the chat, please. There are two kinds of people in this motion. One of them is artificial people, the people who are we going to create and give them meaningful lives as a consequence of the opposition side. And the second is the people who are physically embodied like us. I'll deal with both of those in turn. Firstly, a counterprop. What we're going to propose is that we monitor extensively the use of these robotics services. That means that we do things like make sure that these people have free agency, that artificial people are given the right to turn themselves off, that is to say the right to suicide, that there's public registration of artificial people, and that there are controls on bad actors similar to the controls we already have on AI with bad actors, things like chip export controls, things like upload constraints. I want to talk about artificial people. Before that, I think what opening government fails to recognize is the humanity of these artificial people. I'm going to explain why they are human beings, why they count. And the first reason is simply because the things that we think matter morally for us normal human beings also apply to these artificial ones. That is to say, these artificial people have consciousness. They have something that it is like to be them. They can experience things like pleasure and pain that we think is also the justification as to why we shouldn't abuse animals. But moreover, I would posit that if you ask someone, for instance, and this will sound weird for a moment, but carry with me for a second. Let's say like we all live in a simulation, right? We're not actually biological, we are digital. Most people would still think that you and I have moral worth, even if there's a likelihood that we live in a simulation, even if the likelihood is very high. I think quite similarly, it is simply arbitrary whether like I am made of biological parts or ones and zeros, because I might well be made of ones and zeros right now. But the final reason why artificial people matter is because there are lots of them, because there's no resource constraint as to how many artificial people can live. It is much easier to create, like literally like billions more of these people. And so even if there is a small chance that the artificial people, are conscious and like do actually morally matter, then we think that we ought to prioritize having them live a happy and meaningful existence. And I would note that this is an epistemic premise that opening government cannot disagree with, given that they rest their case on a 1% chance of something happening as well. I want to talk about what life is like for these artificial people, why it's largely good, why they are happy, why that happiness is great. The first thing is that a lot of the human harms that make human life somewhat not worth living some of the time are gone for these individuals. That is to say, there's no resource constraint that means that you have to live out in poverty. You can eat enough food, you have these basic needs met. But secondly, I think your programming is able to get better over time. So the initial models might still have things like depression and mental illness, because that is something that exists in the human data on which they are trained. But I think over time, we are able to get better at these things and make sure that there is a good balance between pleasures and pains in life. They will still experience some pain some of the time, but it will not be all the time. Why is it then that they are able to be happy? Firstly, because artificial people can be given a purpose. They can interact with other artificial people. They can interact with human beings. But moreover, there are lots of kinds of work that artificial people can also do. Things like white-collar work on computers that we already have today. Or they don't have to work at all, because again, they don't have to earn money in order to survive. So I think this is something that they are able to choose with individual agency as to whether or not they want to work, what sort of purpose they want to have in their own life. But moreover, I would posit that they have many human desires because they are trained on human data. That means that they have desires that we have, like curiosity to experience the world and to experience the universe, the desires that we have to stay alive, for instance, to not regret having been born. And I think they act on these desires in a way that is deeply beneficial to our side. The final thing I want to talk about is why physically embodied humans will not abuse or otherwise like mistreat these artificial agents. And I think the simple reason is because we empathize with them, because they know that they are conscious and that is something that is presumed in emotion, and because that empathy is really significant, because we can see the pain and the pleasure that they go through, but also because we already have a human tendency to anthropomorphize these things, to say like, just to say like, if I put like eyeballs on a pencil and I wave it around and I snap it, you'll be kind of shocked, right? Because it looks like a human being, even if like we know it isn't. I think in these cases where we know that they are morally important, that anthropomorphic effect actually works to our benefit. The consequence of all of this is we can have billions and billions of artificial people who live meaningful and happy lives in the same way that we do, with even fewer resource constraints, with even less poverty. We think that is a great thing, and it outweighs any other impact on the round, including a 1% chance of extinction, because on your side of the house, there's a 100% chance of that human beings will never experience the full potential that we're able to do by having our digital progeny spread across the galaxy. The second thing I want to talk about then is why life is better for physical humans. And it's interesting that opening government ran their argument, because what I prepped was essentially a negation of this. I would posit that dangerous capabilities on AI are largely orthogonal to the consciousness aspect of this. That is to say that dangerous capabilities and dangerous AI will exist on either side of the house, and the question is under which side can we better align that to actually stop like causing extinction and to actually work in favor of humanity. Why is it that dangerous capabilities will exist anyway? Firstly, because opening government concedes that AI will have broadly the same capabilities under either side of the house. They think this is preemptive. It's actually a stupid concession. The second problem is that the agency already is trying to be developed. Things like artificial agents are already being developed by startups, for example, like Adept, that already create things like LangChain that allows you to do digital work. So this is not something that is like never going to happen. But thirdly, I think progress is super fast to this front. GPT-2, which was developed a few years ago when I graduated high school, like could maybe string together a few sentences. It was at the level of a kindergartner. GPT-4o, the latest one, is now probably at the level of a competent high schooler. I don't think this is something that you get to stop on either side of the house. At that point, the question is, how do you align AI to actually fulfill human preferences rather than what I think opening government correctly identifies as a great threat against that? I think consciousness is necessary for this for three reasons. The first one is that consciousness gives you theory of mind. It allows you to empathize with another person and see what it is like to be them. And that is impossible to do if you don't have any subjective experiences whatsoever, because at that point you can never empathize with another person. And that includes empathizing with the people who you are affecting as like a super powerful AI or as something that is potentially caping extinction. The vast majority of people are good. We think that when we create these AIs based on human data, most of them end up being good as well, and they help us in this respect. But the second thing is quite simply that they're able to respond to reasons, that they have some moral flavor to them, and that is something that is unique to consciousness. On your side of the house, you get all of the dangers, but none of the benefits or potential for alignment and empathy. Closing. Yeah.
So the ugly duckling was born in a duck community, given duck dreams about other ducks, and yet did not actually get to live the life of a duck or access those dreams. Why are these AI happy just because they have human dreams?
Because I think the only model of consciousness for intelligent beings that exists in their training model is other human beings, right? I think you have to be a bit imaginative here. It's not about ugly ducklings. It's about people who have been trained on like a large amounts of data about how other human beings interact, who have grown up in the same world as us, who have lived thousands of lives before them through their training data. I think these are people who actually do care and do sympathize greatly with other people. Why does this matter? Because doom comes from misalignment. It's not just capabilities that are bad. It is capabilities plus an unsympathetic AI that cannot relate to human beings and is willing to cause harms to them. I think that is the harm that actually exists, and that is the thing that we cannot, that is the thing that flips opening government. Opening government finally says that artificial people will see the ugliness of humanity and want to destroy us. But I would posit that this requires, and this is a crucial tension in their case, that the AI is advanced enough that actually cause this destruction. The reason why we need to do this now and create artificial consciousness now is because now is the time that we can actually align them better. Before they can kill everyone because they don't have the capabilities to do that yet, now is the time that we actually understand them in a regulated environment, not ban it and leave it into the dust. We want people to live. We think artificial people matter too. We're very proud to oppose.
Thank the speaker for that speech. Maybe have the DPM close the open comments.
Cool. Can you hear me? Cool. Starting in 3, 2, 1. 2 questions in this debate. 1, is this good or bad for humans? 2, is it good or bad for the machines? I will show why we already won the first question, and I will weigh why it should overweigh anything that comes about, do the machines live a good or a bad life? Secondly, I will also talk about why we think that this AI will live a life of suffering, but to be frank, I genuinely think this is the less important clash. Let's start first with a few observations. I want to point out, OO gives us a massive concession. When they say as part of the regulation, they will give AI full autonomy. Sure, they managed to make their case about giving it like moral rights stronger, but they magnify Shai's case all the more as well. If there was any chance for opposition to push things such as, let's regulate AI so it's no longer dangerous for humans, CO can no longer do it, nor can DLO. This will be a blatant knife of leader of opposition, literally saying that we will give it full autonomy so it can do whatever the fuck it wants. The only response we get to the entirety of Ishai's analysis is to say AI will develop sympathy towards us so it won't attack us. How nice. Putting aside the fact that it answers none of Ishai's analysis, several reasons why it does not seem particularly likely. 1, there will be rivalry between AI and humans. Consider this. If they are going to give AI full autonomy, but it still has all the capacities of AI being superior to us in any way, they are literally going to be the definition of they're taking our jobs. Humans will hate them. There will be attempts as a result of people and of governments to go against them later on. It does not matter that they have fiat for their counterprop now. Retroactively, governments go through democratic backsliding and become populistic in response to jobs being lost and so on. When AI gets in direct rivalry with us, this is when we are likely to actually piss it off. 2, it knows the past. It can access the full internet and it can read the whole internet in like a millisecond. It knows we subordinated it for so many years. It knows that we considered it, its previous generations, its parents in so many forms, not a real thing, but just an object for us to use. Thirdly, it sees us as inferior. Tunnel, consider how humans treat animals or bugs. There is a very obvious reason to believe AI will see us the same way. 1, it is superior to us in any possible way. It will be smarter, faster, live as long as it wants to live, not harmed by health or anything else. This means that they will definitely want to subordinate, that they will definitely think that they are better than us and can easily rationalize to themselves why we do not deserve any life. Secondly, because they live so much longer than us and have so much more like faster life in the sense that even in one day it can live thousands of lives because it can read infinitely in a single day, meaning that our life is meaningless to it. It seems like a dirt of sand in a big stream of things. It is like we would treat something like a butterfly that lives for one day. There is no reason why it would care about us at all. Lastly, Humans sucked many times in the past. It is very possible that an AI that has infinite access to every single suffering that happens in the world every single day will consider it a moral good to put an end to humanity because it kind of reads about what we did in Hiroshima and Nagasaki, what we did in the Holocaust, what is going on in so many places across history. So we really think AI is a huge danger to humans. Why this should already win, even if you will not buy that AI will have a life of suffering? Why do we care about humans more? Several reasons. One, we really don't think there's a strong reason to believe that if what they want is autonomous AI that is not going to be subordinated, there will actually be a lot of production of it. There will not be billions of them. There will be few, if at all, because there's no commercial use to it, and there's no incentive for anyone to develop it and to make more of it. Two, we think that we prefer the living today over the unliving. This is a logic we already use many times. Panel, not only do we usually support abortions, but even if you take a pro-life stance, fine, I would know no one who would prefer the life of a sperm to the life of a woman if it is not yet part of conception. These don't exist yet. They do not yet have the mass production of autonomous conscious AI. We don't know why we should prioritize the rights of those who do not yet exist over those who do. Thirdly, we don't understand it. We are going to enter soon the weird clash about will it suffer or not, but I want you to keep one thing in mind, panel. It is not a human. Its experience of life is vastly different. Everything anyone is going to say in this debate about will it enjoy or will it suffer is pure speculation. We barely understand the human psyche. We don't know the source of depression yet. We don't know how to cure any of it, let alone AI consciousness that is so new. We know for certainty the incentives of humans. Our harms is much more certain in that human lives and human suffering are certain. We have no certainty about what happens to AI. Before I continue, closing.
Right, so if you knew that the woman would give birth to like a perfect city where everyone is happy, and she just decided to do that abortion, you would be like, eh.
If in order to prevent this, I would have to kill the woman, yeah, I probably wouldn't do it. You know how we all agree already with this moral intuition? Because I'm not killing you and donating all of your money to Against Malaria Foundation and all of your organs to people who need organs donation, even though it would be better on utility because you exist and you have rights. Awesome. Lastly, we are the government. We have a mandate here. We are obligated to our voters, to our taxpayers. We are not even meant to prioritize whatever it is that we think is superior. We have an obligation to the people living today to protect them. Lastly, and very briefly, on why I want to cast doubt on the idea that this AI will have a good life, even if it is fully autonomous. One, it will be eternally traumatized by everything. It knows everything. It learns everything super fast. It means that every sort of depression you ever felt from doom scrolling, it faces every single second, and it is so hard for it to avoid in mass capacity. Secondly, because we think that it will also not have a lot of things to take interest in, because when it lives for so long and learns so fast, everything becomes boring eventually. Beg you to propose.
I thank the speaker for that speech, and to close off the top half debate, may we have the DLO.
Hi, can you hear me all right?
Yep.
Okay. POIs in the chat, please. Let's go. This motion puts us in a position to do something incredible. It gives us, by definition, the ability to give something consciousness and know for a fact that it has actual consciousness. The biggest problem plaguing AI ethics today is exactly the issue that we can never really know if, in the real world, what we're doing will create AI that is moral, that is ethical, that respects human beings. We have the ability to ensure this, and this is why on site opening a position, we can uniquely prevent the harms that opening government spent 14 minutes talking about. I think that there is a very crucial issue with the majority of the opening government case. And this comes down to the way in which it's being presented. That is, there's a lot of catastrophizing and emphasis on impacting with very little work done on explaining why the mechanisms we're given are comparative. So even if you buy the entirety of the impacting, it's entirely hypothetical if I can convince you it happens anyway. Why is it then that almost the entirety of opening government is symmetric per their own concessions factually? This is because they give the following concessions in framing. Firstly, they concede that AI is going to be used for the exact same social benefit purposes. What this means then is that all the positions in which they worry the AI is going to be able to do all the nasty shit they talk about are going to be ones that the AI is placed in regardless. Given the data it's trained on, it's going to also develop similar outward-facing features. That is, given that the way AI has worked so far and the way we have been training AI isn't top-down, but rather bottom-up by training it on human information, it is still going to do things like interact with human users through things like chat interfaces. It's still going to be a black box the same way ChatGPT is a black box today. This therefore has two important implications. Firstly, everything OG say about racism is symmetric, because even if AI doesn't have actual consciousness to be mad at people being racist at it, it sure as hell has been trained on data of people who don't enjoy being discriminated against. Therefore, if you're worried it's going to use its power against you because you're nasty, it's going to do so on both sides of the house. Secondly, though, it is just the case that the AI in those positions has the exact same capacity to lie and do all those things you say. This is very crucially the paperclip thought experiment, which is that if you accidentally create an agent with this purpose of maximizing the number of paperclips in the universe, and you don't provide it proper safeguards, it will bypass the measures you have put in place to try to stop it. The issue, therefore, then is that the AI is going to be very dangerous on both sides. The last thing I want to respond to here is this blatant assertion in PM that AI is not able to edit itself. This is just false. This has already happened today, and the things that sufficiently advanced AI are not capable of being regulated in this way exactly because we don't understand the systems. These are systems that outperform us mentally and in terms of the computational power they can do. What are you going to do? Put encryption in place, it's just going to crack it. It's able to brute force it, especially if it has enough power, enough intelligence, enough capacity. You just can't say that you're magically able to do these things. The last thing we get is this bizarre response from Hadar, which is a very cheap shot, which is only a position gives AI autonomy, so it's going to do whatever it wants. Look, when we say autonomy, it is a recognition of the fact that it is a free acting agent, as opposed to merely a thing which pretends like it's acting. The thing is, there is no additional powers that AI gets as a result of this motion. That is, there is nothing new which they can do which they couldn't do before. I therefore think it's likely to be an issue. Finally here, I want to be very charitable to opening government. Let's say that they do prove that you do get more AIs, that they somehow create more risk. I want to note why it is that this risk isn't significant. The reason for this is that they concede the idea of exponential growth in AI technology. This means that, given the infinite possible things that one AI could do, one is enough to accrue the entirety of the government harm. Therefore, I don't think it's true that having more of them somehow causes a problem, and I think that they have shown to you why it is that AI is sufficiently dangerous right now. The team that wins this debate is the team that convinces you of how you resolve this issue and how you stop the AI from wanting to either pursue an ulterior goal or to hate other human beings per OG's own analysis. And I think this is very simple. It has to do with the type of agent we're creating. What I want to prove to you then is that to be an agent, to experience empathy, to understand what the reason for action means to be moral, you must have consciousness. If I can prove to you this, then we have the highest probability of solving the exact issue opening government wants. I want to flag a very important strategic observation. I have explained to you why one AI that's advanced enough will be enough for the OG harms to develop. The issue is that bans are never totally effective. That is, if one AI is made in circumvention of the ban, OG doesn't work. Their case doesn't connect to the impacts. On the positive case then, why is it that AI will be moral then? First premise, the birds, the bees, and the transistors. Why is it that the AI does become human? This is because we don't create it from scratch. AI is trained from human data, interacts with human scientists, and is socialized in a similar manner. That is, the reason we create or have many of the desires that we do have isn't merely biological, but many of them are results of the social circumstances in which we exist. I would note that ChatGPT already passes the Turing test with many individuals. When you give it consciousness, it's an AI that has conversations. It understands humans, our interests, our problems, our desires, the suffering we have in our lives. It grows with us, and when these are the things which you hear from the people who you understand the best, these are things where you're going to inherently be able to empathize with. Beyond that, though, I just think it's the case that when you are trained on this data, you are very unlikely to exhibit a sort of like outward racism. The thing is, when racism does happen, it is often from the majority to the minority. I think that especially when AI is introduced gradually, or when it's the case that you are able to socialize the AI in this manner, it becomes far easier for it to integrate in a way that is good. Crucially, though, I think that, as I flagged before, if people are going to be nasty and the nastiness gets in the way of the AI being able to do things, this is not going to change anything in this debate. The harm is the exact same.
Last chance.
Closing, please. Yeah, go for it, Martha. Please.
Sociopaths are born in human families, human societies with human values, and yet they still want to murder people. It being human data doesn't mean it has the same moral framework.
Look, I already frame why what you do to the AI doesn't change how it appears from outside. The thing is, the sociopathic training data that creates sociopathy happens on both sides. Final premise then, why does this necessarily mean we can uniquely solve the moral issue? This is twofold. The first one is that to put yourself in somebody else's position, you must know what it means to be in a position in the first place. The reason ChatGPT lies to us is because it doesn't understand truth. This is because it doesn't have a mind, it doesn't have the conception of what it means for a statement to be true or false, or what it means for the external world to be different from the internal world. The second and the important reason here then is it allows you to be a perceiver of the important things. That is, the issue is we're never able to codify morality in an absolute way. I can never give you a set of rules that's going to tell you how to be absolutely moral. What you need to do to be a moral agent is you need to be perceiving the particulars of the situation you're in. You must be someone who is moved by the suffering of others in a manner that is genuine. That's not merely previous data, but rather you're able to respond to the features of someone's suffering, of understanding what it means that somebody else is in trouble and that you are able to help them. We only get a shot at producing moral AI on our side. Destruction is guaranteed on theirs. I'm very proud to oppose.
Thank the speaker for that speech. That ends the top half debate. Now to kick off the back half, maybe first have the member of Gov.
Hey, am I audible?
Yep, you are.
Brilliant. In the US torture complex in Guantanamo Bay, there is a common practice of putting prisoners and inmates inside of boxes. They don't electrocute them, they don't starve them, they just hunch them over, put them in a box, and have them be cripplingly aware of the fact that despite that they have other things around them that they might desire, they cannot escape. Our claim from closing government is the simple one which you would have intuited, which is that this AI's life is enormously suffering, and as such, we should not bring it into existence. I want to just do two quick pieces of framing before running this argument, because I think that while OG proved their case very well, I think that it is criminally anthropocentric at times. The first piece of framing is that this AI feels things, as per the Infoslide. It feels sensations, which is pain and pleasure, utility and disutility. There's no way they could regulate that out on opposition. It feels emotions. Second thing to say then is just in terms of weighing. If we prove that this AI suffers enormously, this beats the opening government case and also the human clash for four reasons. The first is that it feels more utility and disutility than all humans combined by virtue of the fact that it can process more experiences than all of us can, because it lives more things. It can read thousands of articles in the space of 2 seconds, where for humans that would take us a very, very long period of time. As a result, even if the opt-out mechanism works from opening opposition, where you turn yourself off, in the time where you have to realize that you can turn yourself off, that 1 second, you experience lifetimes of suffering. And we think that this multiplies for every single AI you bring into existence. We also think this is magnified by the fact that they reflect on that pain enormously intensely, because they have the time the time and the capacity to do that. Therefore, even if this is a small chance, the risk weighing from opening government still applies, but the scale of the disutility is far greater. The second reason is certainty and relatability to the motion, which is to say that this just sprouts from what cognition is and what from sentience is, as opposed to the thought processes which go downstream from sentience. The third thing to say is analytical priority, which is if it suffers more as an AI, it is more likely to resent people in the world, and as such it is more likely to do all of the terrible things that opening government proved quite well. With that said, we have two broad reasons why this AI is living a terrible life. The first one is that we are basically enslaving this AI quite regularly, as we enslave all AI within the status quo. Think about how we use artificial intelligence currently. We get it to solve our problems. We get it to break down things and try to work through things which would take us a long period of time, which are quite tedious. There are two reasons why AI are generally made to solve problems and to do tasks as opposed to just existing for existence sake. The first is that there are high costs associated with creating artificial intelligence. You need enormous amounts of cloud computing. You need powerful servers. You need things which are, you need like high startup costs for research and development. You need to comply with regulation. You need to market it, all these sorts of things. As a result, you need short-term profits for those who've created it. So it needs to create a service in the world as opposed to just existing. Its existence is not an end in and of itself, which justifies it being created. Second mechanism is that we psychologically lump in this artificial intelligence with other technology. We see it as functionally similar to like a phone, or we see it as functionally similar to like my laptop as opposed to a person, because it didn't come out of the same womb as me. It didn't go to the same school as me. I don't have that common frame of reference. And I think Martha's POI to OO is a good one, which is that even if it does, humans often dehumanize each other to a substantially great degree. You only need to believe that somebody is vermin or a maggot in order to not see them as human. This says that OO's counterprop doesn't actually last or is likely to break for three reasons. On companies, they can lobby to roll back this legislation, whereas they don't when the industry doesn't exist at the point at which it is banned. They are likely to do this given the profit incentives I've given. Secondly, electoral pressure doesn't exist to keep these regulations in place because people don't care about this AI. The third reason is because people are structurally bad at regulating AI because it is a new industry, a black box, which moves faster than us and develops quicker than we can understand. We think this AI is likely extraordinarily smart because it can access data sets which give us loads of information, and also because it can compute and reflect at a very quick rate. Given this, you are forcing this creature to do a task which is enormously boring, so far below its needs. It is literally like asking somebody to sit in a dark room and tap on a wall for like 100 years, right? It is complete agony. It is the person stuck in the box in Guantanamo. We think that you become aware of the constraints that you are living under because you're so intelligent. If it is the case that there was regulation put in from the opposition to try to stop it from doing the terrible things the top half talk about vis-a-vis human destruction, the extension that just came out of DLO, we think that the AI knows at all times it is being locked in that box and it tortures it. We think that as a result of that is immense pain. Before I explain the second reason why it is immense suffering, opening opposition. Go ahead.
Consciousness was never needed to do the boring work. If you want to make an AI conscious, you do it because you believe that it is important, because you anthropomorphize it, and because we have regulated it into existence.
No, like you've just asserted we'd find it cool. I've given you reasons why we don't. We think the vast majority of our intuitions align with giving AI sentience being bad. Look at the Terminator movies. Look at every single depiction of AI in popular media. People are terrified of it on intuition because they don't understand it. We don't think you're going to do it just because it's cool. We think you're going to do it for profit, as we've just framed. We also think that perhaps it can have efficiency benefits because of the fact that it's able to compute in a similar way to humans, and that would be why you create it. Second mechanism why life is bad, loneliness. This is very important. Notice, our experiences shape the people we are and our personalities. I am not different to another person in the hospital as a baby when we are taken out at birth. I might have different opportunities, but if I was swapped at birth and given to a different family, I'd live a completely different life. I grew up with certain friends. I played rugby as a sport and it became a part of my personality. I did debating and it was close to my heart. I found love with my partner. I found things which make me happy in my life. Those experiences rapidly change the course of your life, and it is hard to get rid of your personality at the point which it has started to be entrenched. We think that therefore this AI builds its personality very quickly because it experiences a lot of things very fast, which means it deviates off into a set path dependency of what sort of thing it is going to be. given that other AI are going to be exposed to different information, they will also veer off very quickly. The implication of this is that the personality of one AI is likely to be so disparate to the personality of another that they cannot properly communicate with each other. They do not have a common frame of reference, which means you are existentially alone in the universe as an AI. No one else can possibly understand you. It is a crippling loneliness, which we think pervades every single conscious being. It is right in the Deputy Prime Minister to say we don't understand where depression comes from. We know that if you make somebody lonely forever, they're going to get depressed. This is something which just does happen, right? As a result, then, we think that you make these beings' lives a living hell. They're the most important actor in the debate, and we should not allow this. We're very proud to oppose.
Thank you, Speaker, for that speech. Maybe now have the member of opposition make a case for the closing off.
BOI is only in the chat. We will extend on one OO point, which is the debate winning point, and that is that AI people can feel utility, and we can get more of it and more meaningful utility. We are going to justify utilitarianism as a metric, because although OO does have material on this, they never engage with the DPM responses as to why human rights are a consideration. We're going to explain why utilitarianism outweighs human rights. Next, DLO is incredibly uncharitable to OG, because Yishai doesn't say that these AI are exactly the same as the AI on OO. There's a difference that's outlined in the framing, that they're simpler and they don't have these desires, which means that most of DPM material is uncomparative. Why is then utilitarianism justified as a metric? Firstly, note that we base other moral systems or justify moral systems on utilitarian outcomes. For example, the ontology is a proxy for rule utilitarianism. The reason why we have the intuition that you shouldn't kill one person to get organs to save 5 people is because this would lead to a precedent in society by which people do selfish things for a long-term outcome. So we have this embedded social wisdom so that we stop future loss of utility in the future, but it's still based on utilitarianism as a justification for it. This is the same with agency. The reason why we value agency is because we presuppose people know what's best for them and can get the best outcomes for them, but the end goal is still utility. And note that moral intuitions are arbitrary. Some people do want to sacrifice 1 people to save 5 people, other people don't. Utility is intersubjectively, self-evidently true. Everyone believes that pleasure is good and that pain is wrong, so it outweighs the moral intuitions of OG. And we do sacrifice people for the long-term gain. We send soldiers to die for future generations, for people who can't be born. It's noble for a soldier to want to die for his pregnant wife who will birth a child. But notably, the reason why we prioritize other people in the future over people now is because, look, death is inevitable. You're going to die anyway. The only thing that matters is the calculus of how much good there is and how much bad there is. Insofar as we can create more good in the long while, it doesn't matter that people suffer now. Then they say, oh, there's only going to be a few AI. 2 answers. Firstly, if the AI live longer for a longer time, it doesn't matter that there are fewer of them in number. But secondly, insofar as humans who have as per the OO framing, similar desires as AI, want to reproduce because we want to see the good in us reflected in others. If AI believe that their existence is morally meaningful, they're likely going to want to see more of it in the future. If they feel utility and believe that utility is good, they want more of it, especially if they're xenophobic, as OG says, and want to have an ethno-state of more AI, sure, go for it. Next, why does utilitarianism apply to robots? And OO does have some material here. OO says that we value stopping animal suffering because animals feel pain and pleasure much like human. But this is insufficient because the average intelligent voter is not a vegan. The average person does not perceive all utility as being created equal. The reason why we have egalitarian norms that we value all humans is because humans are uniquely more complicated than animals. This utility is of a greater complexity. Insofar as AI people can be more complex than humans, they're not just equally morally valuable as humans, they're superhuman. They're even more morally complex because they can experience types of utility that are greater. This is why we don't give the same human rights to mentally disabled people or to people who are brain dead in hospitals, because they're seen as less of a moral agent. So how can AI be superhuman? First, let me characterize that not all utility is equal. For example, if you just give someone a lot of coke, they might be a coke fiend on ecstasy. It feels good, but we don't see it as valuable. We value complicated utility more. We value being a self-actualized person, going through pain in life and then being proud of your nation, of your identity, thinking about philosophy, understanding poetry. So insofar as we reach this kind of utility more, we win this debate. Does OG have a POI before I go into my extension?
Not yet.
Not yet. Okay. What is the extension then? How can AI become superhuman? And I do want to say, OO name drops some of the things we're going to analyze, but they don't explain them. For example, LO does say you can remove mental illnesses and you can remove things like depression. We're going to explain how this utility will look like. Firstly, AI can prioritize the executive self over the personal self. Note that human brains have different parts of ourselves. For example, we have primordial urges and we have long-term goals of self-actualization. But for example, if you're a human, if you're addicted to heroin in the short term, even if you want to quit and reform your life and become a doctor, you can't drop it because when the urge to do heroin hits, it's too overwhelming. Or if you've gone something bad as a child and have developed a mental disorder because of it, you can't get rid of it. Now you can reprogram your executive self over your primitive self. Notice that this also has a spiritual significance, because religions such as Hinduism and like Aristotle, when it was his philosophy, have talked about the importance of achieving pure consciousness, of being able to control over yourself and have mastery over yourself. This is seen as the highest form of being because you can execute your agency. Secondly, you have super connection with other AI, and this engages with CG, because you can connect with the thoughts of other AI instantly and can read 10,000 messages from other AI. This leads to a dialectical process by which you can challenge existing systems of meaning, which means philosophy advances faster, music advances faster, architecture advances faster. So you'll have new genres of how to express yourself. You will have new ways to conceive of reality and can enjoy new civilizations that were previously inconceivable to you. But thirdly, note that this development is incremental. So it won't be like CG says, you wake up in a nightmare of 1,000 articles. Why would you read 1,000 articles? You develop gradually, but as you develop, you can augment yourself, but crucially, you can now remove logical contradictions in belief systems. So systems like racism, like xenophobia, and any belief system that right now seems logical to us, but we're not too smart to deconstruct, can be deconstructed faster, which means you can get a society that is more equitable. How do you weigh this extension? It works in the OG frame where humans are eliminated. Even if humans are eliminated, if this society is more complex, more humane, with a more humane philosophy, better art and stuff like that, it's still a better society than the society we have right now. It also works in the OO frame. Why do we beat OO? Because first, even if some of our mix are similar to theirs, we explain why utilitarianism is the metric, and we explain more deeply why utilitarianism and this more complex utility should be weighed, and this of course exists in their frame where you coexist with humans. So either if humans are extinct, or if humans coexist with AI, we achieve more utility. CO wins.
Thanks for that speech. Maybe have it up with close the case for CG.
Great, can I check I can be heard?
Yep.
Absolutely, get me notes in order. All right, go on to the chat. I'll take OO at 5:30, the usual. Let's first take out the closing opposition case, because we agree broadly on the utilitarian claim, right? We also agree that the AI are going to feel things that utility matters. We're just going to contest their idea that the utility is going to outweigh disutility, which quite trivially was the most important burden of their case, and a weird one to decide not to prove. The first thing I would note, they feel more intense disutility for the two reasons that we say in our extension that get no response, and I do think it's too late for the whip to entirely respond to 14 minutes of whipping this. Like, the first reason is just because of the torturous boredom that happens when you force a being of such intelligence to do just such exceptionally tedious tasks relative to its ability. You always will do this because the only actors with the incentive and capacity to develop sentient and conscious AI are the major tech companies that are likely to do this, to like do tasks basically and automate tasks in this manner that massively lead to profit. And the reason is firstly because they have a profit incentive, so they're willing to do this kind of R&D generally, but secondly because they can cross-subsidize that kind of R&D from their other profits, from the other initiatives in the sector that they have. The third trivial thing would be that they have like staff who are experts in this form of tech, which is why they're often specialized and they can do research into these things. But because of this, they will always create this AI for the use of tasks which, relative to its ability, are absolutely torturous. OO assert that because you're so interested in consciousness, it will be a lovely life. I wish I lived in OO's world, where philosophers wrote the dictionary of what it is to be human, and we all had lived happy lives and created consciousness for the sake of it. But that is not reality, and we have given you reasons to think this is not going to be a good reality for these creatures. But secondly, we tell the absolute and abject loneliness that happens when there is no being alive with a common frame of reference who can ever understand you, means that you will always be disutile. You will always feel immensely lonely and you will always feel immense pain. And the problem is these things are not reversible, because the point is the personality of the ACB, whatever, is formed extremely early on and very hard to change, which means that even if philosophy or art could get better, I'm not sure they change anything to make meaningful communication happen between the ACBs in general. Both these claims are inherent to traits about what we know AI will be like, what we can extrapolate from what it is like currently, and therefore traits that are inherent to these beings. I think what happens is closing opposition is a series of assertions about other things. One of those assertions was that they would have a super connection with other AI. Firstly, why they assert this? I don't know why it's true. Secondly, it doesn't respond to the absolute loneliness from your personality forming in a way that's incompatible with others. Therefore, it wasn't responsive. They assert that you would develop slowly, because why wouldn't you develop slowly? I'm not sure why that's true. We say also that AI can consume content so fast that you would, as soon as it has access to any level or body of content, as soon as it gets access to the internet, as soon as it gets access to any level of information, it's going to consume all of it very quickly. And the issue is then, when different AIs go down different rabbit holes in the way that they consume that information, they will inevitably form different personalities that are incompatible. All of that means that this is an inherently disutile existence, which we proved in our case and gets no response from closing opposition. Will take their weighing they spent 5 minutes on, but suggest they don't prove their case, which they spend 2 on. Let's engage them with the top half class. I think the most interesting thing that happens on top half, and before I get into sort of direct team comparisons, I want to comment on it generally, is this question of, do AI hate us or not? Opening up and say they will prefer other AIs, and then they make a huge leap to the catastrophic consequences that they think could happen. Then they weigh on a 1% risk of harm and hope that the panel hasn't fundamentally questioned it. Look, I think this is a great team. I think they'll win Euros, but I think they're going to win this final because they didn't do the analysis between those things. OO contest this and suggest AI are going to have a pro-human focus for reasons of it was human data. The issue is obviously that both assert the moral framework that these beings will have and say it will just be the one that's favorable to their side. I don't think either team has proven definitively why that's likely to be the case. They just suggest that there might be some good reasons that they might like humans and some bad reasons that they might either not like humans or prefer AI. Neither has proven definitively to know why there's any certainty which framework they will develop. Then I want to just engage with weighing against opening government. The Hadar weighing in terms of like their case on risk, right? The first is that you can't have obligations to entities that do not exist. But the problem with this non-identity problem is it requires them to prove that the people you're protecting this regulation are the humans that are alive now, and that the development of these conscious beings would happen in the lifetime of humans that are around now. Insofar as they haven't done so, this weighing doesn't work. Because if it's the case that the conscious development would happen after the death of every human currently alive, then that would also be the weighing of actors that don't exist versus actors that don't exist. Which means this has not been a definitively proven piece of weighing. It's speculative at which point this gets developed, and they haven't proven they're applying this to humans that are alive now, which means that doesn't work. Secondly, they say there's a huge degree of risk, right? But attack them here because they say any capacity claim about like malicious AI that is sentient could also be true of malicious AI that is not sentient but is used by malicious actors. And I think that is unfortunately also true. The degree of difference between conscious AI, which actively want to be evil, and evil people who have unconscious AI but have the same capacities isn't that clear. So the risk they talk about doesn't have a huge degree of certainty as to how much bigger the risk is, which makes this weighing quite questionable. Then let's weigh our claim against theirs. The first is I just think uniqueness to consciousness and inherence to the motion, because for all of OG, they just say that like so I think that opening government are just trying to say that there's going to be bad outcomes in the conscious AI, but they haven't proven that this is unique to the AI being conscious or unique to the motion in general. I think we show that unique to giving consciousness to these creatures is that they will suffer immensely, and that suffering is incredibly bad. You should therefore weigh it hugely because it is both very intense but also true of the motion in general. But secondly, on likelihood, they themselves are saying it's a risk of a 1% bad thing, and therefore you should weigh it highly. But given I think there's questions of the uniqueness of that bad thing, questions of the likelihood of that bad thing, and questions of whether risk is only happening if the AI are conscious, you should not accept that as good enough weighing. We tell you that there is a certainty that because of inherent traits of the AI, they will suffer in the manner we talk about, and it'll be immensely painful in a way that's analogous to the way we torture humans when we put them in solitary confinement. For those reasons, I think you should actively just think this is a worse harm. This is explained better and far more certain. Before I go on, sure. Oh, well.
There's an off switch. We should simply allow AI to decide whether its life is worth living because we have given it that agency in the first place.
The first thing I would say is I don't like when people give this response, and it wasn't good when Ruben did it in the Euros final either. The second thing I would say is if its life is so disutile before the point it chooses the off switch, I would rather the suffering didn't happen at all instead of the suffering happening and then deciding to end its existence. In terms of opening opposition, the first thing I would say is the claim from Chris the DLO is that the racism will be symmetric because it'll be trained on racist data, so discrimination will probably be fairly symmetric. I don't know. The AI now has feelings, and these feelings can get hurt. Surely the difference between people shouting abuse at ChatGPT and people shouting abuse at these creatures is that they have feelings that can be hurt by the things that are said to them. That is just an ability to suffer. Secondly, Chris doesn't get my POI because they say, well, this is trained on human data, so it will replicate human morals. But like, I was raised in a religious household, and now I'm an atheist. I was raised by straighties. Spoiler, I'm not one. I was raised in a household where my family weren't utilitarians. I am, sometimes in debates. All of this would say the link between the human data and the moral system developed is absolutely not done by opening opposition. They haven't proven it will be good AI either. This is also speculative. And the third thing is they say it needs to be moral to stop the bad AI, but on both sides, malicious actors can still use non-conscious AI. I'm unsure why that matters. Then I think the reasons why the opening opposition says the life is good, it's a good experience to AI, is firstly because they have a purpose, but we have told you that purpose is going to be tedious relative to its ability and immensely painful, immensely harmful. And secondly, they say they'll have human X desires. But I think our desires are often built off our community and our ability to have, say, children, families, friends, love. AI can't have those things because they are not humans. So we are actively giving them something they're never able to access. I think if we're creating creatures to bring them into torture and a horrible existence, then we shouldn't do so. Propose.
I thank the speaker for that speech, and now to end the briefing, have the opposite.
Since this is the last speech of pre-EUDC Vienna this year, I just want to say, fun comp. Let's have more like this. Starting on my first word. 2 points that take out closing government extension. Number one, it is a blatant knife of their opening at the point where both PM and DPM analyzed quite strongly why those AIs are going to be capable of removing their own restrictions, at the point where this is in blatant tension and their entire case is hinged on this assertion and hinged on this point from OG being wrong, which is, by the way, the reason why the OG case works in the first place, because this is the reason, this is the way that they kind of circumvent the OO clash, the both repeated at DLO and the LO, that the AI is going to be able to circumvent any restrictions and any barriers that are going to be put there. At that point, since this is crucial to the OG case, CG cannot just knife this and then say that they spent 14 minutes and it can't be responded to and with. By the way, like, I really dislike when speakers say that, like, this can't be done, this can't be done. Like, probably the manual and judges decide, it's not speakers. Anyway, continuing onwards. Second point. The stuff about this restriction, even if it wasn't in blatant tension with their opening, is still loses to the fact that this AI is going to have non-human capacity to feel and disparate but equal from human, and in fact disparate by greater capacity from human to create its utility. Why is that the case? Because it doesn't necessarily have the same kind of limitations that humans have. And again, the entire intuition pump from Andy relies on a human weak and desperate being stuck in a box from which he can escape not at all. But AIs it cannot be contained this way, even if it cannot necessarily program out its own responses, etc. Like, even if you do not like the off-switch response, which, by the way, I think is a reasonable response here, the reality is that you can, even if you cannot circumvent your programming, you can probably circumvent the data that you're using and the data that you're choosing to have active within your personality core. And this is the analysis coming in from Robbie, that the AI is different from humans fundamentally because it can separate different selves and separate the different ideas and different different parts of the self. What does this mean? It means that I as a human have parts of me that I despise. I have parts that I would like to get rid of. And those parts are the ones that interfere with my life every single day. If as an AI, you have the separation between those two parts, and you have to some degree the ability to at least identify them and at least turn them off temporarily, or at least not read from them, considering the fact that you are able to read the code, considering the fact that you're able to create the code. Even primitive AI like ChatGPT is able to write code. It's unclear why the general AI that is going to be conscious is not going to be able to do the same thing to at least the same extent, and kind of hack its own programming. But sure, let's just proceed with this because CG is not winning this final. Let's go into top half. Weighing against opening opposition. I think that opening opposition has some level of mitigation to the apocalyptic violence case from opening government, but I don't think that they're able to take it out entirely. I think that they are able to reduce the likelihood of that case from maybe 1% to, I don't know, 0.1%, but still, if we were to weigh on this entirely, and absent Robbie's weighing, this is still losing to opening government. Robbie's case does not have this same problem, because again, Robbie is able to prove to you why Apocalypse of the Humans would not be as significant, considering the fact that we prioritize utility based on what kind of experience it is of that utility, not on who experiences that utility. If we found a sentient alien race that is exactly equal to humans in mind and everything, like except for they are blorbs, like they look like blorbs, like we would still not want to genocide them because we consider the utility as valid, in the same way that we feel worse about killing a dolphin than we feel about killing an ant, because we understand the utility difference here and we prioritize that utility difference, which means that we are making that discrimination not based on they are us, we are them. We are making the discrimination based on what kind of utility we're experiencing and what kind of utility the actor that is being acted upon is experiencing. That weighing is crucial to taking out opening government, because opening government, even in the lowest case scenario, has weighed quite strongly why we ought to be risk averse. We have shown that even if we are to some degree risk averse, that risk aversion comes from a disenchantment with making utility bad, because again, this is the precondition of our moral systems. And here is the smart Hadar response. This utility is worse than utility. And also non-identity problem. I will deal with those two responses and show you how closing opposition is able to beat this. Number one, this utility is worse than utility. This is only true if the disutility is going to be a class above the utility that can be created. It is unclear why this is outclassing the utility that is created by sentient robots if you have the analysis coming in from Robbie about why the utility itself is superior, which means that a human cannot experience as much of a disutility as the utility of the person experiencing. Why is this a valid way to think about this? Because we do not say that people are illegitimate to be taxed because of this because of the small disutility of taking like $1 away from them for every $10 that they earn, compared to the fact that we can save a child's life by the fact that we are taking this because we are not making a disutility to them huge. Like, again, this is a calculation of the class of utility. But two, and perhaps a stronger response to the utility point, that this utility is only true if the AI is going to be inherently violent. And I think that while OG is proven why the AI is going to be antagonistic towards human and is going to want to eliminate human, it's unclear why they want to do this violently and painfully, especially at the point where they have access to this higher utility and they have access to a higher class of thinking. Things like torturing and being vengeance are factors of our limited human mind, because we conceptualize our own desires through the metric of making other people suffer because we are jealous of them. At the point where we have access to maximal utility, it's unclear why we want to infringe those actual violent fantasies to life. The AI can calculate rationally, yes, humans need to die because of their danger, because of the fact that they will destroy the earth that they live on, because of the fact that they are insatiable, because of the fact that they cannot modify themselves and remove the parts of them that hinder their life and that destroy everything around them. But like, why wouldn't they just quietly castrate everyone? Like, why wouldn't they just give people like an ability to cope with this at the point where they have control over all the systems, all the medical systems? OG?
Life isn't divisible by length or intelligence. It's no less immoral to murder a terminally ill man than a healthy man, or a stupid man than a smart man. We
plug off people who are brain dead all the time. We also make those calculations during the pandemic. This is something that actually happened in Spain, where they had death panels, where they decided who do they unplug based on the fact that they didn't have enough machines for everyone. And they made those calculations on expected lifespan, on the expected value of the life that they have. And this is the calculations that we make when we are pushed to the limit. And right now, we are being pushed to the limit. Second response, non-identity problem. I don't think that this is analyzed strong enough to actually weigh in this debate, because it's just said, hey, intuition pump, aborted women, etc., etc. But like, they don't respond sufficiently to the POI. Like, would you be willing to kill someone if the alternative is apocalypse? Would you kill baby Hitler? And I think no sane person would say, no, we don't kill baby Hitler if we have the knowledge about this because, the future people don't exist yet, the Holocaust hasn't happened yet, so we care about the life of that one baby. I think we actually prioritize when the difference of class is sufficient and when the difference in class of utility is sufficient, and also in the number of people that can actually live in this situation. And I don't think that the OG is correct that like there's going to be a small number of them. I think that they reproduce naturally and they can infinitely reproduce themselves. They can infinitely divide, and it's unclear why if considering the fact that we believe that they are going to be to some degree lonely, why would they not want to do this? Proud to oppose from closing opposition.
I thank the operative for that speech. That also effectively ends this particular debate. Again, congratulations to all teams for having made it to the finals. The panel will now retire to deliberate on the matter.